just recording a session to demonstrate how the river flows activity works. So what I've done, I've got the two different text files downloaded to my computer that I'm working on, and I'm just going to work my way through the problem. So the first stage is we were talking about how we can go through and look at the structure of the data and understand straight away that this is what we call a tab delimited text file. So there's a tab that separates every single value, and there's a return symbol just there, and that's what starts a new record. So we understand the structure of our data. So let's go and import our data in for starters. What I'm going to do is open up Microsoft Excel. And my very first step is that I need to go to the data ribbon at the very top, and I need to get some external data. So what I'm going to do is go and import my data in, external data, from a text file, from this one just here. Now when I choose from text, I just need to go and find where is that data stored. And here it is here under my river flows data, and it's riverflows.txt, and I'm going to choose import. Now this is where it's important to understand the structure of the data. When you have a look at this one, the wizard will attempt to guide you through the process of importing data. So the first question is this delimited data? In other words, there's a character like a comma or a tab that separates each field, or is it fixed width? Now in this case we know it's delimited because we actually had a look at the file and we know that there's tabs that separate every entry. You don't see many fixed width examples nowadays, they're much more rare, typically with much older database systems. So I'm going to go delimited, next step. You're going to find Microsoft Excel's pretty smart at guessing this stuff. It'll attempt to work out what you're doing here. Now it's already predicted that it's tab delimited, but let's for example assume that it didn't get that right. This shows you the data that's there, and you can see it's just put all the data together rather than separating it out into columns. Now if you weren't sure, you might think, well maybe it's separated by spaces, but you look at this first column of data is still all jumbled up. That's just not working for me. Sometimes you'll get comma separated values, but you can see again it hasn't separated. So this is why you can see I like to go and check the structure of the data before I go too far. In this case, it's tab delimited. So I'm going to choose that one, choose next. Now this stage is all about formatting. Now, it can accept a general format, which converts numeric values into numbers, date values into dates, and all remaining values into text. So what it's saying is, what's the style of the data? So general is okay. What I am going to change, see this one here that's got dates in it? Be really careful using Microsoft Excel or the vast majority of the software packages about how it deals with dates before 1900. Now because there's some very old data in this set, I'm actually going to bring my dates in as text. Now the reason I'm doing that is I know that everything pre-1900, it's going to start getting it wrong, and I don't want it to do that. So if I leave it as text, it's a safer option. So I'm going to choose text. I'm going to leave the rest just as general, and that's okay. I'm going to go finish. I'm going to bring it in as a new worksheet, and in a moment when it imports all that data, you can see it's now appeared, and because I got the questions right about the structure of the data, can you see it's nice and neatly laid out in terms of columns? And just to be organised, I'm going to double click on the sheet name at the bottom down here, double click there. I'm just going to call that one River Flows. So there's the first part of my problem solved. Now, next stage, I need to get the river flows locations. So again, I'm going to go back here to a new sheet, and I'm going to go to external data again. Remember, I'm on the data ribbon here, and I'm going to choose from text. And this time I'm after river flows locations, so I'm going to go import. Again, I've checked the structure of my data. I know it's delimited. And in this case, it is tab delimited. It's guessed it correctly. And you can see again, it's isolated the two separate values quite nicely. Again, I'm not going to muck around with this. I'm just going to go with general. The only reason I changed the previous one, I didn't trust date, it's because I know Microsoft Excel can be a bit strange with the way it works with dates. I'm just going to go finish. There's a new worksheet, And down the bottom down here, I'm just going to call this locations. So I'm well into my problem now. I now have both of my sets of data imported into two separate worksheets, and the data looks right, and I've renamed the worksheet, so I'm not going to get confused about what set of data I'm looking at. So we're going to move now to the next part of the question. Now, the next part, it says to create a filter to show the location ID, the date, the level, and the discharge. Now, filters works really, really well on Microsoft Excel. It's a great feature. The first step to create a filter is you've got to select all the data you want to be able to filter on. Now, the hard thing here is you've got to get to the bottom of the data. And now this particular data file is huge. So there's my first value. So I've clicked on cell A1. I'm just going to drag my slider here right down to the very bottom. Just want to make sure I don't go too far. And you're going to see that there's over 97,000 rows of data. Now I'm going to show you a quicker method of this than this in a moment to be able to show you another way of dealing with this. Here's my last record. Now I'm going to hold Shift on the keyboard, so it's just Shift, and click the last cell. And can you see that that's now selected everything in that range for me? So that's one method of you selecting all the data. Now once I've done that, again I'm on the Data tab and I'm going to choose Filter. That's this option just here in the middle. Now filtering just means that now I can go back and isolate my data into different versions. So I can look at just one particular set of the data. So if we go back to our question sheet, on our question sheet it says to create a filter, and then it says use a criteria to extract the flow data for location name equals Brungle Bridge. So what I'm doing is going down to locations. I need to find out what's this location ID for the one that's called Brungle Bridge. That one. And you can see the location ID is 410039. So I need to remember that. 410039. So I'm going back to my river flows. And if you see down here in terms of location ID, I can drop down the list of choices and now I can apply my filter. Now at the moment it's showing everything, but if I get rid of the ticks and tick just the location ID that I want, you're going to see that now it is only showing the data for location ID is 410039. So what was about 97,000 rows of data has now come down to a much more modest set of data. So there's my filter working for me. Now a couple of other really nice features about using filters. Yes, you can go ahead and just choose which piece of data you want to see. You need to experiment with that and try it out. But here's another nice one. If I wanted to go and say, all right, what's the biggest floods on record? Let's just quickly go back here and I'm just going to save this just because I don't want to lose what I'm up to. I'm just going to call it river flows. Actually, I won't. I'll call it river flows and I'll call it solution. I don't want to lose my work. So calling it river flows solution. Now let's look how clever these filters are. I'm showing 410039, that's my Brungle Bridge. Now here my level. Let's say that I wanted to go and see all the biggest floods. If I were to sort that data by largest to smallest, it will reorganise it. So straight away you're going to be able to see that, okay, the biggest flood on record at that stage appeared in 1970, on the 25th of September 1970. And then the following day it had come down a little bit. But you can see at that stage, that was the biggest flood on record. The interesting thing, knowing a bit of local knowledge, just going back in last October, we had a flood that went to 4.2 metres. So we've broken all the records with the latest flood just back in October. So we've had a huge flood. So you can see now I've got it filtered by location and I've changed the sort order. If I wanted to see, well, hang on, how low did the river ever get? I could go sort from smallest to largest. And you can see here it's actually got a negative value. Now that means the river was so low, it was virtually dry, it was so low that it was actually below the gauging station. Now this is back in 2008, back at one of the worst stages of the drought that we've had in recent years. So incredibly low values there, and they're all in 2008. So you can see that by having a filter, you can have a lot of control over how you structure your data. Now I'm just going to put this back into my date order. I'll just leave that as it is. And you can see now that I've got my filter in place. Now the next stage is it says, all right, let's go and copy all of that data and we're going to put it on a new sheet. So let me just get back to where we were a few minutes ago. This is my original set of data. Now while I've got it here, I'm going to show you another method of selecting data. I want to select all of these records and I'm not going to use my mouse buttons at all. I'm going to leave my mouse aside. I'm only using keyboard shortcuts. Now if you hold the shift button on the keyboard, notice as I tap the down arrow, I'm starting to select. So I'm just driving this entirely with keyboards. Now a nice little shortcut is this one. If you press the end button on your keyboard and then down arrow, it will actually go down until it hits the last value in that set of data. And now I can come across with the right arrow. Now again, that's a nice one for you to practice because with large sets of data, it's actually easier to navigate around using keyboard shortcuts than it is to navigate with a mouse. Now having selected my data, I'm going to copy it. So I'm just going to use Control-C on the keyboard. And the next stage is I'm to create a new sheet down the bottom. So here's a new blank sheet. And I just want this to be river flows for Brungle Bridge. Now I need to paste. Now be careful how you choose to paste. I'm going to take a little shortcut here. If I use a straight paste, paste brings across any formulas, any formatting, anything like that that came with that cell, it all comes across. What I'm going to do is choose to paste it as values only. This option down below down here. So if I paste as values, what it does, it leaves behind all the formatting, all the functions, all the maths, it only brings the answers across. Now that's a nice clean way of you bringing data across. So make sure you remember that one because I suspect you'll use it fairly often. So there's my data there straight away. So I'm almost finished my solution at the moment. I've imported my data, I've used a filter, I've limited it down to a certain number of records, and now I've created a new sheet just with the values for Brungle Bridge. Now the next stage is this. It says export the data from this worksheet as a comma delimited text file called flow data for Brungle Bridge. So I'm just going to double click down. I'm just going to cheat and grab that worksheet name. And now what I'm going to do is export it out. Now the way I do that, if I was in a database, I'd go to Data Tools. It doesn't work quite the same way here. All I have to do is go back to the Home tab, go to File, and I'm going to choose Save As. And this is how you export it out. You actually just have to save it as the data file type you need. So I'm just going to choose where I'm putting it. I'm going to give it my file name, River Flows for Brungle Bridge. Now, where I choose the file type, I'm going through here looking for comma-separated values, CSV, comma delimited. That's the option that I want. Now, when I choose Save, it's going to give me a warning. Now, what it says is the selected file type does not support workbooks that have multiple sheets. To save only the active sheet, choose OK. Well, that's actually perfect because remember, I don't want the other sheets now. I only want this one worksheet that has Brungle Bridge. So I'm going to choose OK. Now, it says river flows for Brungle Bridge CSV may contain features that are not compatible with CSV, comma delimited. Do you want to keep the workbook in this format? Now, I already know this is what I want because I don't want to bring any formatting, any special features. All I want is just the data. So it becomes a very simple solution. Now, I just want to quickly show you what the result of that one is. Here's my river flows for Brungle Bridge. I'm going to open that up in Microsoft Word just to show you. Actually, WordPad will do me. Because it's already open, let me just go and save this away. Just saving my work. Okay, so I've got all my work saved there. Now remember, I just want to go and check the structure of the data, so I'm going to open that up with WordPad. Now, if you have a look at the structure of the data, this is different to the ones we started with. Remember, they were tab delimited. They had an arrow separating each value. In this case, it's a comma that separates every value. And that's why I wanted to show you that. Those are the two common standards for importing and exporting data. Tab delimited text files and comma separated values. Okay, so that finishes that activity. Really, really important that you go and practice that one. Take your time, play the video through and have a go on your own computer and then play a bit more video. Just keep stepping your way logically through it. And I'll stop the